Hey guys, I'm learning TFT and I'm sharing my learnings with you so that you can learn and I can learn better as well. In this video, I'm going to talk about my key mistakes in set 15. Every game of this set, for the games that I remember to do, which is probably something like 90% plus of the games I played in set 15, I would have a post-game review where I would take screenshots of key decision points that I felt like I made a mistake. And then at the end of the set, I just went through them and basically categorized them into common patterns. And in this video, I'm going to talk through those common mistakes. And my goal here is to abstract these learnings into broader fundamental categories so that for myself and for you, I can use these learnings in an abstracted way to apply to set 16. I could apply to set 17. And frankly, for many of these examples, I do not recall the specific patch optimizations a lot of times. And so it was useful for me to be able to review this at the end of the set in a context where I maybe forgot some of the nuances so that I could really zoom out, abstract, and figure out what are the generalized learnings that can then be applied to future sets. So that's the game plan for this video. Before I do that, I'm going to do the meta mindset of the day, which is a psychological, philosophical section where I talk about my overall approach to getting better at TFT. And also, hopefully, it's a segment that'll be useful for you to apply to your life using TFT as a metaphor. If you want to jump straight into the key mistakes I made, take a look at the timestamp in the description below, and you can go ahead and skip to those sections. So, meta mindset: process greater than outcome and effort greater than results. These are ideas that I've talked about before, but I came across Shane Parrish's newsletter with these two quotes that really resonated with me. When you fall in love with the process rather than the outcome, you don't have to wait to be happy. When you're impatient with results, every day feels expensive. When you're impatient with effort, every day feels like progress. So when I think about these quotes in the context of many of the mistakes I made here, I did go through the process of writing down these mistakes as I went, but oftentimes it felt like a grind. I didn't deliberately do it for every single game that I went through. I was not regularly reviewing these mistakes throughout the set. I'm doing it now. But part of that is because I was impatient with results. I was trying to move on to the next game. I was trying to focus on the outcome over the process. And frankly, this is a process for me to figure out how to keep, making a little transition every set, every competitive off season to make a little bit more progress on improving my process, a little bit more progress on improving my effort over the emphasis on the results. And this video is a part of doing that. But I think what I want to be able to do in set 16 is to be able to write down these mistakes as the games are occurring and also be able to review them more regularly instead of just at the end of the set. Because what I've noticed is that in some of these, I basically bucketed them and like put them together when I'm making the same repeated mistakes. And you'll see that there are definitely mistakes that I made where I'm repeating them. And if I have happened to have reviewed the mistakes earlier, I likely wouldn't have repeated as many mistakes as I did, which could be the difference in like 2 to 400 LP, like no joke. So I think that's definitely when I am really able to zoom out, when I'm really impatient with the results, when I fall in love with the outcome, that's when the every day feels expensive and the results actually suffer as a result of that. And it's more clear to me now when I look at all of the stuff that I'm aggregating here. But in the moment when I'm just feeling like I made a really bad mistake and I just need to make up LP, being so super short-term laser focused on just, not being able to see the forest from the trees, that's the more expensive thing. And it's that impatience with the results that gets me in trouble. And so I really want to be able to try to shift my emphasis towards being more impatient with effort. And I've talked about this in my last video, where I really want to focus this set on studying more than I play. And last set that did work for me. I got to Challenger in 172 games, the least number of games I've played to get to Challenger. And yet, even then, there was more that I can do on the effort side, on the process side, to get even more efficient. Because I know I can't compete with the top players just purely off of time. I have family. I'm kicking off this new project, which, by the way, thanks for everyone that has supported me in the process. It's a learning platform and community. We actually just came up with a name for it. It's called TFT Dojo. We don't have the site live up yet. My partner, Virtual, who is a Google engineering director, former Google engineering director, is in the process of hopefully getting that up live soon, as at least the splash page and a sign up link. I'll also include an application link in the description below if you want to sign up for the waitlist. But we're close to getting an alpha out for the existing playtesters and user research group that we have right now. I'm super excited for that. And a big part of doing all of that is really focusing on the process and the effort, and being impatient with that instead of being impatient with the results. So all of this, me doing this video, me putting together, working on this project of creating training tools, a community, a learning process, all of this is in line with this core idea of really focusing on process and effort over outcome and result. All right. And by the way, I think this generally applies to anything in life, not just in TFT. It really is impatience with the effort and patience with the results that will lead you to being able to fulfill your dream. So I hope that you're able to think about this, not just for TFT, but how you might be able to apply this to your life. And I'd be curious to hear your thoughts in the comments about how these ideas relate to where you are in your journey, whether that's in TFT or in your career or whatever it is in life that you are, trying to pursue. All right, let's dive into the key mistakes I made in set 15. I broke these down into general high-level categories and then more kind of nuanced topics. And then within each of these is the specific situation. So anytime I have more than one thing in a single, kind of broader category, it's clearly a situation that I made multiple mistakes. So in this spot here, I had 8 cats, 7 Rakans, and I'm at 50 gold here with a dupe. And I'm at 53 HP, 1 loss. Every loss I'm taking here is probably going to be about 10 to 12 HP, which in the end game in stage 4, that could be 1 placement diff, maybe even 2 if it's a close game. And, if you think about it from that perspective, it's like, yes, if I roll down, I could be losing up to 3 interest gold, maybe a little bit more, because that could be 3 plus another, 4, 7. But even if it's something like 10 gold, a question you could ask yourself is, what's more valuable here, having 10 gold or 10 HP? And I think looking back at this, having the extra HP is probably more valuable. And on top of that, it's not only that, it could be 1 life, because I have 2 other players here that are basically right at where my HP level is. And so it could actually be more than a 1 placement swing by just being able to beat, one of these players. And so if we think about the math here, I believe when you have 8 copies of a 2 cost, it's something I want to say it's something like 15 gold to hit a single copy on average. I don't think it's any more than 18 gold. something along those lines. So my EV to hit at least a cat 3, and then arguably I basically need one, two more copies to be able to hit both of them 3-star, right? Like my odds of getting that off 30 gold is really high. And so from this spot, I should have just went all in and tried to hit my 3-stars. So that was a mistake, and I think I don't recall the exact what happened in this game, but I do think that it ended up costing me likely 1 or 2 placements. All right, similar situation here. This was, I believe, on the patch where Jason Kate was solid. Also towards the end of stage 4. In this spot, I was actually on a 4 loss. And I have 6 Jaces and 6 Caitlins with 54 gold. I do have a lesser dupe as well. And from this spot, it's for 3 cost. It was about 20 gold average to hit 1 copy. And so if I need, what is that? 6 copies, minus 1 is 5 copies, times 20 gold per copy. Or sorry, it'll take about 20 gold to roll for 1 copy. I probably don't have enough to hit both of these 3-stars, but given that I'm on a 4 loss and I'm like losing HP fast, and this is actually a situation where it's a lobby where like 10 HP could actually be a 1 or 2 placement swing because everyone's HP is actually quite compressed together. I think it's probably worth rolling down here because if I just hit one of these 3-stars, it could really just like save me a placement. And part of this also depends on if I have win out potential to be able to hit, all 3 of these to be able to win out. But the safer play here is likely to just roll down and dupe one of them, and just like take my placements. So key idea here is kind of knowing what your roll efficiency is, and what by roll efficiency it means like what are your odds of being able to get a huge spike to your board, and kind of knowing how much gold on average it takes to hit 1 copy of what you're looking for. And at the very least, I've talked about this before with what I believe Dish Soap has done in the past, is you don't have to fully commit to going all in here. Like what we could do is just roll down to 40, roll down to 32. And if we happen to hit 1 or 2 copies of Caitlyn Jace, then we can send it. But if we roll down to 40 and we don't hit any copies, we roll down 40, maybe we hit 1 copy, then we can decide to roll down to 30. If we hit another copy, then we can roll down more. But it doesn't have to be like kind of this all or nothing pre-commit whether you go all in or not. It can be kind of a decide in stages type of situation. And I think one of the challenges that I run into is I hesitate, at the start of the round to decide whether to roll or not in the first place. And what I should actually be doing is, earlier in the stage, I should already be thinking like, okay, if I hit one more Jace or Kate, when should I be thinking about rolling down to 40 or or 30, or when should I be sending it, right? And just preemptively planning that instead of trying to make the call in the moment. All right, in situations when contested, and especially with extra econ, but just when contested in general, you really want to roll first, because especially for forecasts, since the difference between rolling on, let's say, on level 8 with no one contesting you, the average cost to find 1 copy is something like 20 gold of your desired forecast. But the moment like there's like 5 out of the pool, I think the average cost goes up to something like 30 to 35 or maybe even higher. So the interest gold that you're making is actually less valuable than the just being able to roll down first. So let's see, this spot here, I actually had 27 free rerolls because I had shopping spree and I actually ran out of gold. But in this spot, I was actually contested by two other players for karma. So I guess this was on a karma patch. And um, in this spot, I should just don't even look at econ. Like I have so much econ here. And I should just keep rolling, like keep rolling to find my karmas because it got so much more expensive. And I actually think I did the math, or I pulled up uh, I think this is meta TFTs, or maybe it was a roll calculator, but the average gold it took to find one copy went from, oh, okay, this is meta TFT. It went from 24 gold to 33 gold to 95 gold to hit one copy. Because I was contested by two other players and they went all in before me, even though I had 27 rolls. Like if I just rolled my 27 rolls here, not only does it make it cheaper for you to get your copies by rolling first, but it makes it exponentially more expensive for your opponent. So it's a double whammy, right? And so when you're contested, especially if you have econ advantage, you really want to make sure that you roll first. And I could have even just rolled, and even if I couldn't buy it, I could just lock shop. In this spot, I could also just sell the RE. I could sell the Rise. Like they're not essential to this board. And yeah, like I ended up in this spot on 4-2 where I did have a karma pair, but I was at 0 gold. And then I think at this point there were like 8 or 9 karmas out of the pool. And I don't recall what actually ended up happening in this game, but I think I probably hit really late or just like missed completely, even though I had shopping spree and I could basically completely wasted the value of shopping spree because I didn't, roll down all the way on 4-1 and hit before my opponents, which for sure I think likely cost me like at least 2 or 3 placements. Because I think in this patch, karma was actually really strong. And if I hit, I could have knocked out the other 2 contesters, which is basically 2 placements. But instead, I think both of my contesters actually hit. And then I went, bottom out of those 3 players. And this mistake likely cost me at least 3 or 4 placements. All right, this was the patch where Jinx was good. I had Tiny Team, 2 other players contesting Jinx, and for some reason I decided to wait until 4-2, and I don't think I hit very well. In this spot, it would have cost me 42 gold to level, which would still give me 40 gold here to roll, which is enough when there's 2 other players contesting Jinx, at least to get 1 copy of Jinx. I want to say in this game I probably rolled on 4-2 and then just like didn't even hit 1 copy of Jinx, especially if I picked my 4-2 augment slowly. Although I guess this was a augment game where you had earlier augments. But yeah, I really should be making sure that I send it earlier here. All right, this was a spot where I was contested on Ari. This was when Ludens was still a thing. But I was contested on Ari. And if I'm playing 3-cost reroll, I really gotta make sure I win basically like early part of stage 4 before all the 2-star 4 costs start coming online. And for some reason, I didn't really roll here. Especially with I have 66 gold as well. I should be just rolling down to at least until I hit a 2-star Ari and like a 2-star Swain, maybe a 2-star Nico, to really stabilize here. And this part of this is knowing when you should be strong, which is a separate category I had around tempo. Know when you're supposed to be strong. So yeah, this again is especially when I'm contested. It's not just so number one, even if I'm not contested, I should be rolling here. But especially given that I am contested, I should be rolling even more aggressively to be able to hit my 2-star RE first. All right, this was the Mentor Janna patch, I assume. I was contested Kobuko, and I was on a 7 streak here, and I had a Kobuko pair. And for some reason, I did not roll to get Kobuko 2, which looking at this spot is kind of seems ridiculous to me. Maybe I thought it was strong enough, but this guy has a 2-star vibe knuckle dusters or whatever it's called, and it ended up being fight diff. I recall, and that was a huge mistake, especially because I'm contested and I'm on streak. That's an easy decision to roll down to find. I think on average this will probably cost me something like 12 to 15 gold to find one copy, which, you know, let's say it cost me 2 interest gold points. Like, preserving streak here, just this round itself is worth 4 gold. Not to mention if I can, win 2 rounds in a row, that's 8 gold, which easily makes up for the loss in interest here. So that was a big mistake to not roll for a Kobuko 2. Plus, I think my contester actually rolled far deeper, and then it made it even more hard to find my Kobukos later. So this was a big mistake. All right, when on streak with lots of outs to improve board at level 8, rolling is better than pushing 9. So in this spot, I was on streak with, I was on a 3 streak, I had 67 gold. I had, I don't know how I had a 6 Leonas, but I have, let's see, 1 Cassante, 1 Yumi. I have 5 Malzahars. If I roll down 60 some gold, odds are decent. Like, I don't know if I was contested this game. I assume not, because I didn't put it under the contest category when I was writing down my notes. But if I'm not contested Yumi, it's something like 20 to 25 gold per copy of Yumi. And I should be, odds are decent that I hit that. Same goes for Cassante. Same goes for even finding a bunch of copies of Malzahar. Like, going back to the dish up example, or frankly, even like high rolling some Leonas, but odds are decent that if I roll down to something like 30 or 40, I could then reevaluate. Like, if I hit both a Yumi pair and a Cassante pair, or let's say I hit like 2 more Malzahars rolling down to 40, then I could decide to roll down to 30 and maybe like decide to roll down even deeper depending on what I hit in those first rolls. But what I ended up doing was I think I just sat here and tried to go 9, which, looking at this spot, really doesn't make sense. Like, I don't remember how strong Yumi was on this patch that I was playing, but especially because I'm also on streak, like, I should be trying to, see, at the minimum I could roll to something like 50, around 50, because I don't lose anything by doing that. And if I happen to hit a pair, then I can push harder, right? So this spot doesn't really make sense for me to just sit on streak. All right, for rolling, speeding up 4-2 roll down, which includes picking the augment faster and open selling when it makes sense to do a big turn. In this spot, I ended this turn with 27 gold. I'm reasonably low HP at 49 here. I have a bunch of items that I didn't place. This was the spot I was in. So the big thing here is I should have really been open selling. Like, basically what Rainplosion suggested a while back was, if you know what comp you're playing towards, and it's unclear to what extent this makes sense for set 16, still like feeling out set 16. But if you know you have a big turn, you just figure out which units you're keeping. Ideally, on neutrals, you could just move them over to one side of the board, and then you could just open sell like everything on the side of the board that you know you're going to sell. Keep the stuff that on the other side, and that just makes it so much easier for you to do your roll down without having to like figure out on the fly which unit you're selling and which unit you're keeping. Like you pre-process that so that you don't have to have that extra compute load on your brain when you're doing the actual roll down itself. And I think if I had done that, I wouldn't have ended this turn with 27 gold and still not have placed my units by the time, or placed most of my items by the time the round started. All right. In this spot, I ended 4-2 with 27 gold. Yumi is a comp in set 15 where you really do need to get strong and stabilize more. And in this spot, I had a Leona pair here. I mean, it's arguable whether or not it makes sense to continue pushing, because the expected for me to hit another Yumi is like not that great. So in hindsight, this spot like might be okay. But I do think that there's something to be said for me to pick my augment faster so that I have more time to roll. All right, next is know when to stop rolling. In this spot, I had Nico, Hero Augment. I do remember in this game that Voidson had an early Nico 2 in stage 2. And so I think I was trying to really make sure I could hit Nico 2 here on 3-5. But in hindsight, by the way, I was wasting a lot of this epic value because you get more XP at the start of the stage. So I probably should have waited till 4-1 here to actually level and roll. But the odds of me finding one copy of Nico, especially since Voidson had 3 copies, was 20 gold according to MetaTFT. And I got to this spot where I'm around 40 gold. The odds of me hitting 2 more copies of Nico are pretty slim with this amount of gold left. Like I basically need to go all in here, which I think in this game I actually went to 10 gold and I found only 1 copy of Nico. And so with knowing that it costs around 20 gold on average to find 1 copy, I probably should have just stopped here. Or maybe at most gone to like 32 and then stopped. And maybe if I hit 1 copy within above 32, then maybe I keep pushing. But I don't think I actually found that second copy of Nico until something like less than 20 gold, at which point like the odds are super slim. So it just wasn't worth it to grief my econ so much. So in that spot, I should have just stopped rolling around here. Okay, so this was a spot where I was 3-way contested Jinx. I'm not really expected to hit that last copy of Jinx because I think at this point there were something like 7 copies of Jinx out of the pool. I want to say the odds of, or the amount of gold it cost me to find 1 copy was probably something like 30 gold plus. And I could just like roll to just YOLO it. But in this case, my board like I'm first off, I'm healthy. Dink Memes just hit a Poppy 2. I think someone else was contesting Jinx, or just this was the meta where Star Guardian was strong, I want to say. And if I wait until stage 5, especially since I'm healthy, I'll have more gold to be able to do a more reasonable roll down on 5-1 to hopefully hit Poppy, Cassante 2, and Jinx 2. Whereas right now, at best, I'm able to hit Jinx 2. But even then, in stage 5, if I have a Jinx 2 but no 2-star frontline for Cassante and Poppy, it's unclear how strong I would be anyway. And I'm going to be taking way more damage in stage 5. So in hindsight here, looking back at this, it probably would have made sense for me to stop rolling here instead of, I think what I ended up doing was I was just donkeying to like less than 10 every round to try to hit this Jinx too. And then I just bled out and I just didn't hit, and I just lost so many placements as a result of that. All right, so this was a Jace Caitlyn game again, and I started this round with 67 gold, like for no real reason. Like I did not roll down more aggressively for some reason. And I know I'm staying here, so I might as well roll. I have a Jace pair. Could have spiked on that. I have Rakan pair. I have Ez pair. Uh, I could hit a Garen pair. Like, there's no reason I should not be rolling here. So that does not make any sense. um, and then roll on streak. We talked about this earlier with the Cassante example as well. But anytime that you're on streak, even just a 2 streak, you win one more, you get uh, what is that? 2 gold basically. 1+1 for streak, +1 for the win. Whereas if I lose, I get 0 gold. And so if that is fight diff, that's worth 2 gold, which could be worth going to above 30 gold to break even. And if I can get an upgrade within, and stay above 40, that's a +1 gold diff. And so part of it depends on how many pairs you have and how likely it is that you can get a spike here. But I do have a Rakan pair here. If I find one more Battle Academia, then I can get 5 Battle Academia in. So in this spot, it probably makes sense to try to push a little bit to hit more upgrades since I'm on streak. All right, so that's rolling. Next, we have items. A key idea here is holding stage 1 units based on your items. In this spot I have cloak and belt here, which makes for the most obvious slam here is going to be Even Shroud. And if I am going to play Even Shroud or AD specifically, I should basically be selling out of the Lucians and the basically sell out the Sork and the Prodigy angle, though keeping Crystal could make sense. But basically selling these 3 and trying to angle around AD more. So playing around the Gnar and protectors, something along those lines. And I think in this actual game, I ended up selling the Gnars for some reason. I don't remember what patch this was on, but yeah, basically using your components to influence what units you hold as opposed to the other way around. All right, with scaling, slam suboptimal items to preserve HP. Which, by the way, in set 16, there's a lot more scaling built into different units. So this is probably even more relevant in set 16. Like, let's say Aurelian Soul, or I don't know, I forget what else. But in this spot, I think I was trying to greed Bis for Cat. Instead, I should have just slammed BT Zonia and rely on over 9,000 to be able to give me way more stats in the long run by just staying alive longer. I think in this game, what I did was I just greeted, I didn't slam, and then I lost a bunch of HP, and I wasn't able to get my over 9k really going as well as I would have liked to. So I would have likely saved like 1 or 2 placements by just slamming early here, suboptimal items. All right, consider what component you want off carousel ahead of time. So in this spot, I had 9 lives, so I know I'm going to get first carousel pick. And I believe, okay, yeah. So in this game, I had scouted the other 9 lives player that was going Ashe. And so I know I can get, they were likely wanted to get a bow off carousel. And I have a Syndra 2 here with Rising Chaos. So I know what do I want off carousel given these components, right? I want a tier for Shojin. And so that makes it obvious that I should slam a Steadfast. Instead, I don't think I slammed anything. because I wanted to kind of keep my options open, and that just cost me, more gold, or sorry, more HP. So um, yeah, that should have just been a slam here. All right, in this spot, I had a sword glove here, and I think what happened this game was my Malphite kept on dying because it didn't have multiple items with the Mogul's mail, and with Moguls, you really want to have multiple tank items. Like Moguls by itself is just not a strong tank item, and it would just cause him to die too fast. And so with an open sword glove, I know I'm probably not gonna win fights, early on like this, because my Malphite's just too weak. And so in this case, I should have been saving my glove sword, ideally saving glove for vest, especially if I know I'm getting early carousel pick for steadfast, or in the worst case, taking a belt off carousel and slamming Sterex. But my priority here should really be around building 3 tank items first instead of trying to build IE. Especially because the amount of gold I'm generating from, getting 3 items will make up for the gold that I might get by winning fights. Plus, like, my front line is not strong enough for me to really win fights and kill that many units. All right, preemptive decisions. In this spot, I have open rod, open tier. I want a glove for JG, or a vest for Bao. I was playing towards Mentor Janna. I was last pick, but this was on the encounter where you have like extra units on carousel, and I got dizzy because I didn't do the preemptive planning, and I ended up, I think, picking a 3-cost bow here, which didn't make sense because I already had a void staff. And yeah, this was just, I should be planning ahead what item components I want, and I wasn't prepared. Really planning ahead what components you want off carousel can save you a lot of headache. All right, so this spot here, I had 8 soul, I had a Li 2, and I had 2 items on this ballista, and I was too hard stuck on 8 soul fighter here. But given these items, given I have basically 3 sets of 80 items, what I actually did in game was I sold this Bear too, because I was, in my head, I was like, oh, I should play 8 soul, so I'll just move these items over to Lee. Instead, in hindsight, I really should have gotten out of 8 soul. I should have just played 6 soul. Put this in, maybe take out the Fury, switch this to Juggernaut, and then keep 3 full carries. Carry the volley 2, lead 2, and Samira 2 would have been much stronger than selling this and having items on a Callista too. And then try to find a Braum instead. So that was a big mistake. And then fully itemizing your carry and tank in stage 4. There are many times where I'm not balancing frontline and backline. That's another separate category here. But in this spot, I put the bow on Akali. This was in the Akali meta where you want double Nasher plus QSS. Instead of putting 3 items, I just was like, had it hard stuck in my mind that I needed to wait for Biss. I have 2 removers, so I should really just be 3 itemizing her and remove the 3rd item once I get the final Nasher. So yeah, and then on top of that, I don't think I maximize keeper value here as well. All right, tempo. Know when you're supposed to be strong. In this spot, I had Prize Fighter. I think this was probably a meta where AP was not as strong, because what I would normally think I would do is to just slam Warmog plus JG. But I think in this spot I was just like trying to greed items too much. And when you take Prize Fighter, or frankly any item augment, you're going to be stronger early game and you're going to fall off later game compared to someone that takes some um, econ, because they hit their late game units earlier than you. And so you got to know when you're supposed to be strong, right? And on top of that, Prize Fighter as an augment in general, you want to be strong early. So I really should have been slamming here and I didn't. All right, this spot, it's 4-1. I'm playing Cog reroll. This was 6 Protector Cog reroll. I started the fight with 62 gold and a Cog pair. Also Cannon pair. I have no idea why I have extra gold when I haven't even hit my Kogma 2. I had a hedge fund, but even then, like, I'm low on HP. We're entering stage 4 with 3-cost reroll. You really gotta make sure you win before the 2-star 4 costs come online, because that's when you save HP, put pressure on the lobby, so that you give yourself a little bit of breathing room to generate enough econ to then do your final push. Because once the 2-star 4 costs come online, they're gonna start beating you, and you need to get your 3-star 3 costs very soon after that. So every fight here in stage 4 is at least 1 placement diff, and I did not roll to hit my cog 2 there. That was a mistake. If lost streak early and playing 2-cost reroll, need to be strong stage 3. So similar idea with 2-cost reroll. This was when Kaisa was strong, I believe. I have 2 duplicators, and I'm on 6 loss. Like in this spot, I need to hit some stronger frontline and to get Kaisa stacks. I mean, I guess looking here, my board's like reasonably strong. I guess ideally I would have Udyr instead of this Kale, and then I would have buy here for 6 or 4 jug. That could be a big difference, especially since I'm on 6 loss. But I think this, I ended up losing at least 2, I think, out of the fights in stage 3. And when you're playing Kaisa in this spot, you basically need to win this stage. And so I think in hindsight, looking back at this game, I probably should have rolled way more aggressively to like try to find more of a solid front line here. All right, this is a Crystal Gambit game, so you get permanent scaling, and in a permanent scaling situation, you want to not greed and try to deploy your resources. We talked about this in the cat game with over 9k, but in this spot, I have enough gold to go 9, and I have a extra Braum here I could throw in. And from what I recall in this game, I think I lost this fight like just barely, and this likely was fight diff. And this is the diff between 8th and arguably could have been a first with, I had 7 Crystal Gambit in this game, which is 7 placement swing. Or even if I found a strategist. So there were a lot of things I could roll for in this spot. Yeah, like I don't know if this was a barely loss, but for sure, either way, I should be deploying my resources. Like if I found I guess it would have cost me 53 gold to level, so I would just throw this in. But yeah, either way, it's a mistake. I should have been deploying all my resources on 1 life. Don't overvalue protecting streak. consider odds that opponent will deploy resources to beat me. So in this spot, so we did talk about situations where you are on streak and you have good roll efficiency. But in spots where you're on streak and you have poor roll efficiency, it may not make sense to be too aggressive. And this was a spot where I took Tesla coil because I wanted combat to try to preserve streak. But this was a situation where I believe 2-cost reroll in this patch. I don't fully remember which patch it was, but in many situations, 2-cost reroll could be decent. And if there's a 2-star Kaisa, if that was the patch, or a 2-star Janna, like that could very likely beat this board. And so if I'm taking the augment primarily to preserve streak, and I believe this patch was when Tesla coil was just nerfed, like sometimes it makes sense to just give up streak and just go for the better augment. And this spot would have been forward thinking. I could have gone for 7 mech in this spot easily. And so yeah, that was a mistake going for the Tesla coil. And what I think what ended up happening was I lost the next fight. And I specifically took this with the intent of it being strong right now, and it backfired right away. All right. So this was another spot on 3-2 that was full streaking, where I think I was trying to greed for the best thing right now, and that was sponging, but it would have sacrificed a lot of future value. So I think, again, I don't remember what was on this board, but my notes basically said I should have rolled left to see what was behind this, and taken something that maybe was like uplink would be better for later, but just be okay with giving up streak in situations where the lobby might be putting a lot of pressure on you and your board isn't necessarily strong enough to survive that pressure without deploying a ton of resources. So just not over deploying resources to value short term over long term. All right, balancing front and backline. In this spot, I just had way too many backline items, especially in this Yumi comp, which is a stall comp, which you want to have way more frontline items and fewer backline items, making sure you have that balance, right? And a lot of that comes down to carousel preparation and going back to what I was talking about with items, like planning what components you want off carousel ahead of time. But basically, general idea here is really prioritizing 3-item tank before itemizing your second carry. In this spot, a little bit hard to see, but prioritize 3-item carry and tank. I think I basically went for combat here, but what I should have been doing is take big grab bag, because I'm still short a 3rd item on Ashe. And you don't want to load into stage 4 without a 3-item carry and a 3-item tank, especially since I'm low HP. So this definitely was a big grab bag angle. All right, in this spot, I took a Bastion emblem off carousel, but I already had enough frontline because I have keepers plus extra strategists, so lots of shield. What I actually needed here was damage, and so off carousel, this goes back to like kind of preemptive planning. I should not have been taking this Bastion emblem. Probably should have taken like some type of damage item on the Gwen here, which could have been like Death Cap, or even like QSS, Arc, Blue Buff. Like, yeah, not Bastion in this spot. Like, I think I was, in my mind, I was kind of thinking like, oh, with so much shield value, I get even more tankiness with the Bastion emblem with more armor MR. But I just didn't deal enough damage. And especially with Sork. Sork is all about bursting down your opponents. And I just didn't have enough damage. And if you think about this specific fight, I'm playing against a scaling Yumi and an Archangel Seraphine. And sure, like this fight lasted a long time because I had so much tankiness. I just didn't have enough burst to get through this Leona. Um, and so I think having some more damage there would have made a big difference. All right, commit to a line and balance front and back line. In this spot, I believe I was committing to over 9k Kale. And so then I should really be prioritizing front line. So I could have been selling, this Ezreal. Uh, I don't think I ended up buying the Kennen pair here. Could have also had the Garen pair. So basically, I could just sell like some of the crystal, or I could sell the Jin and just really go for the front line. Yeah, because that's why I'm lacking. So really balancing front and back line. It's not just thinking about front and back line from an item standpoint, but from a unit standpoint, depending on who you're kind of really committing towards as your carry. All right, positioning. I forget which units in set 16 have like displacement for positioning, but really paying attention to where your main tank is and how your enemy units could affect your positioning, right? So in this case, Braum walked up through my Leona, and then the Gwen went straight to my Yuumi in the back. So in this spot, I probably should have, I could have baited this Braum, basically put both of these guys over here on the right, would have been a lot safer, and cause Braum to throw one of them instead. In this spot, I could have I generalized this to using HP plants and statues to bait high burst AP carries. So in set 16, you have like Azir statues and soldiers or whatever they're called. Like Freljord, are they statues? But basically in this spot, if you have a high DPS damage like Karma, I should put this root right in front of here, and Karma does like a 1 hex radius, so I could have moved this 1 hex over left, put this over here, and that would have been a lot safer. Or even like just putting this Cassante over here, since Cassante would have come back to life. Especially with the scaling Archangel and Gunblade here, I want to make sure my Leona stays alive long enough for this healing synergy to start taking effect. But in this specific spot, Karma just bursted down my Leona before my Gunblade and healing could really start to hit escape velocity. This one's pretty straightforward. I did not position my Braum with Shred in front of my Ashe, so I should put this over here. Pretty obvious mistake. And that fight, I believe, was actually pretty close. It was a Shred diff. All right, in this spot, Yuumi is a scaling champ. So in general, if you have a scaling champ, which is, both Yuumi's ability design and Archangel, it should have been putting Yuumi opposite side enemy carry. What happened here was that this Jinx burst down these two. These tanks just were hanging out over here, and then this Jinx walked up and just like killed my Yuumi. And I believe from what happened in this fight, if this was actually opposite side, it would have given Yuumi more time to scale up, and I think I could have won this fight, or at least saved more HP. All right. In this spot, especially because this whole team I was playing against was all 3 stars, I was just doing kind of chip damage for each of them. And I think at the end of this fight, there were a bunch of units that were at low HP, but like nothing really died. So in this specific spot, I should have put the 2 TFs next to each other so that I could focus fire and kill the units faster. And then on top of that, this kill was level 9, so it was doing AoE. So I should have moved this one over here so that it wasn't like getting bursted down from that kill. All right, diminishing returns. Basic idea here is pay attention to what stats you don't already have. In that you don't want to keep stacking the same stats. This goes back to multiplicative multiplicative stacking of stats, where if you add stats, it's going to be less valuable than if you multiply different. So if you get more of the same stat, you're adding them together. Whereas if you have more of different kinds of stats, they multiply. So in this spot, I had a bunch of Crystal Gambit. I think was going for 7 Crystal, which gives you a bunch of damage amp. And I don't think I remembered that, or maybe I didn't realize it. And yeah, I still picked Bronze for Life, which most of the value is in the damage amp. So I just got a bunch of damage amp. And in this specific spot, Roll the Dice would have been more helpful because I was lacking frontline items. If I had Roll the Dice, could have gone on Swain here, could have gone on this Lee. Would have overall been much better than just getting more of the same thing that I already had. All right, and then in this spot, I picked Super Genius, which gives me more AP equal to my mana regen, but I already have a death cap and I already have Archangel or Radiant Archangel. So I have plenty of AP, but I don't have crit. So critical threat would have made a lot more sense than Super Genius here in that context. Like Super Genius just gives me more of what I already have, whereas crit like helps you really amplify the strength of having all of that extra AP. So that's like a very clear, obvious one. The reason I did that though was because it was at that point I was just memorizing like, oh, these are the top 2. I forget what the other one was. Bullet Hell and Super Genius. I just had it in my head like, oh, auto pick those 2 whenever I see them. But this goes back to like, you should not really be memorizing what to do. It's always context dependent on what the optimal choice is. And so even though critical threat's not the ideal one most of the time, this is a spot where it's clearly better to pick critical threat than it is to pick Super Genius. All right, scouting for early game, like let's say at 2-1, especially for early in a set where there are some pretty OP win out lines at 2-1. This was a situation where like, I think for this patch, Garen Hero Augment was completely broken. In this game, I picked risky moves and I forget what I was playing, but what I should have done was first scouted to see if anyone was playing the OP like completely broken line like Garen, which ended up being true. And that comp easily won out. And when you're playing, something like risky moves, you could just die a lot faster if you're not able to stabilize later. And if someone is playing towards an Exodia angle, like you just gave up like 1 or 2 placements as a result of that. All right, planning ahead. After cashing out Crystal Gambit, need to instantly level and roll down to start snowballing. Instead, after this cash out, I finished this turn with 28 gold, and my board was not strong enough to stabilize. And I think I lost this 1 round, which later I did stabilize a good amount, but then I just like lost 1 random fight to someone that high rolled. And so yeah, basic idea here is I should be really preemptively planning, going back to the idea earlier of 4-2, like open sell the units that I don't need, and very aggressively roll down, which comes down to just planning that out in advance instead of like thinking in the moment. Yeah, planning ahead. In this spot, item wise, I should have also been planning ahead to say, okay, after stage 6 or stage 5 creep, how these items should be distributed. And I have a Vow and a Crown Guard here and a remover. And what I should have done is I ended up putting double Vow and Crown Guard here because I wasn't actively thinking about like, well, what is the optimal redistribution? What I was just thinking is like, oh, I have another item. Let's just put them on the best spot. But what it should have been is Vow here, remover this Bramble, put Bramble and Crown Guard over here. All right, reminder. So one thing that I'm going to start to do, this was off of Solo Gosong, is just like having a, I think he just has like a notepad here where he'll write like red slash thunder, then like anti-heal, and he'll just like put an X or something so he can remember. And then also if there's random stuff that comes up, like in this spot, I have moguls and a gambler's blade, which in the end game I want to reforge them. I can even reforge it here, but I forgot. I didn't even end up using the reforger. So what I could do here is like basically write down reforge moguls slash gamblers, right? And then I have this checklist for me to remember to do later. But instead, a lot of times I know I need to do something. This also applies to stuff like, you know, keepers, best friends. I think Soju in Worlds like played a bunch of rounds without best friends value because he forgot, right? So it's just having a checklist of stuff that, you know, it's trivial in the moment when you look back at it, but sometimes you just forget. And this giant notepad approach, or I think Solo Song like maybe sometimes just uses in-game chat to type there. But making sure you don't forget the kind of trivial stuff. Like this game, I had clear mind, and I went a bunch of rounds like forgetting to sell my bench to get clear mind value. And in this game, it actually cost my ability to get to level 9 and have a little gold to roll. In this spot, I was just straight up missing Shred in stage 4. And I could have slammed Spark here, and I just straight up forgot. I didn't slam Spark. I slammed Stoneplate and Crown Guard here. So just like really trivial stuff that sometimes you just forget. And if you have a checklist, you won't forget. Another spot where I didn't reforge Mogul's Mail, which by the way, in this set, in set 16, you have Mel and Ornn that can generate Radiant and artifacts, like random ones in the late game. So I would write down like if maybe I would be angling towards Noxus with Mel to write down like save those reforgers. Those reforgers are worth significantly more if I might be angling, you know, towards that direction. And in this spot, I didn't have anti-heal, so I lost to this because I couldn't kill it. Yeah, I just didn't really prioritize it, I guess, off of Carousel. And so just having that checklist can make a huge difference. All right, so that covers all of my key mistakes in set 15. I'm going to be kind of hopefully regularly reviewing these concepts and like doing it for set 16, my set 16 games as well, connecting it back to these high level patterns of mistakes that I've been making and hopefully repeating them a lot less, and really focusing more on this idea of process and effort so that I can minimize these mistakes. Because if I can really make, I'm pretty sure if I minimized all of these mistakes, like I think I peaked at my historical peak has been 1300 LP, but that was like kind of during a period where a lot of the top players like during the off season weren't playing. During the main season, I think I'm like around 1100, 1150. Pretty sure I could get to 1300 or 1400 if I just didn't make all of these mistakes. Like it's a bunch of very obvious mistakes that someone like Dish Soap or Wasian wouldn't be making. And so I think my game is at a point where it's like, I don't think I'm that far off from being able to play at a higher level. It's just the level of consistency and minimizing these mistakes. It's kind of like in chess, right? Like if you keep on making blunders where you just hang a knight, or even like at higher levels of chess, you just hang a pawn. You know, that's the difference between being at 1800 versus 2000 elo, right? And so I think that's where I am in my game right now, where I need to get better about really focusing on the process and effort to improve at minimizing these mistakes, and the results and the outcome will follow. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you were able to learn something in the process. I would love to hear your thoughts around which of these ideas resonate with you most, as well as just generally the meta mindset and what you think about it. I'll include again a link in the description for signing up for the waitlist for our TFT Dojo training tools, tech-enabled training tools and community. So with that said, I hope you enjoy Set 16 PBE. I found it super fun. I plan to hopefully do a little bit more videos. I am going to be interviewing some tier 1 pro players, so keep an eye out for those videos coming up. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.